Howdy, and welcome to the second episode of the N1 Fitness podcast. Thanks for joining. I just want to start off by touching on the first episode. I want to send out a big thank you to my family. I shared a lot of sort of intimate family info, and I just wanted to say thanks to them for being so amazing about that. And then another big thank you to Darce, because she did such an amazing job with the interview process on the first episode, and she just was a huge support in getting this podcast off the ground, because sort of starting this thing has been a bit of a process. I'm really happy I did it, but it's been a lot of work. So now we're up and rolling, and the hard part's over. So, and then lastly, a big thank you to all of you guys. I got so much amazing feedback on the podcast, and just I heard from people that I hadn't talked to in years from high school and things like that, and it just meant a lot. So I really want to thank you guys for downloading, listening, and then being super generous as far as reaching out and saying what you got from the podcast. It was really, really cool. So thank you. So today, let's get right into it. Today we're going to talk about my current nutrition and movement protocol. So just to give you guys an idea of what I do on a daily basis to just stay feeling and performing well. So let's go with movement first. Basically, one of the foundations of how I move is walking. I am huge on it. All my clients are probably tired of hearing me talk about it, to be honest. But I average about 15,000 steps a day. And that kind of equates to about, 12 kilometers. And for anybody in the US that's listening, that's about 7 miles or so. So 10,000 steps, 8 to 10,000 steps is a really nice marker to get to. But you also have to be mindful of where you're starting. So if you're starting at, if you're only moving 2,000 to 3,000 steps a day, and most days you're not leaving your home or doing a whole lot outside of your office, then don't jump straight to 10,000. Just start to incrementally let that climb. So it doesn't seem like the task is essentially just like, too big. The jump would be too big, and you might just kind of deter yourself. So incrementally step that up. No rush, but just make sure that you're moving in the right direction. And another thing with that is I like to get as many of those steps outdoors as possible, because light entering the eye is the main factor in anchoring your circadian rhythm. So basically it lets your body know what time of day it is. We have some light sensors in the back of our eyes that are actually not involved in vision at all, but they just sense light. So those cells in the back of the eye there let the body know what time it is. So that's really, really important for setting that body clock and getting everything sort of on track. Another thing is that I stand to work. So I work a lot from home 3 days a week, and then 2 mornings a week I'm in the gym. So I either am standing in the gym with clients, personal training one-on-one, or I'm standing to work at my laptop like I am right now. You're going to burn twice as many calories standing versus sitting. That's just an added benefit. That's actually not the reason why I do it. I do it because it makes me feel more mentally alert, focused, and also basically my back doesn't get jacked up. So my back feels a lot better. If I'm sitting too much, I tend to get tight through the low back and, glutes and stuff like that. So I figure if I just stand, then I need to spend less time mobilizing. I'm in less pain, and sort of it's a win-win all around. So that's a huge part of my movement protocol, is actually just spending a minimal amount of time sitting. As far as weights go, I lift weights 2 times per week for about 20 to 25 minutes. So I'd say I average, say 45 minutes of lifting weights per week. Nothing crazy. I used to lift a lot more weights. I probably went to the gym, 5+ days a week for an hour, hour and a half plus, but my priorities have changed and I just don't enjoy lifting weights like I used to or as much as I used to. So I basically have a sort of a set little routine that I do that I'm actually going to share with you guys, based on maintaining my current body composition, just feeling strong, feeling mobile, and just able. So I basically start with, I do 2 to 3 sets of push-ups. I'll do 2 to 3 sets of a pulling motion, so maybe like a TRX row or anything related to like rowing on the horizontal plane. So I would be pushing, a push-up would be on the horizontal plane, so you're on the floor, and then pulling on that same plane, so a TRX bodyweight row, something like that. And then I'd also do a couple sets of pressing overhead, so maybe a dumbbell press, standing dumbbell press overhead, along with usually 1 to 2 sets of pull-ups. And then for my lower body, I like to do a lot of lunges. I'll do some light deadlift work or some kettlebell swings. And then I'll mix in some arm work at the end with a little bit of shoulders. So I might do 2 to 3, usually 3 sets of some sort of curl, 3 sets of some sort of tricep press down or overhead extension for the triceps. And then maybe just a little bit of shoulder work with some side laterals or bent over side laterals, and that's it. So I keep it super simple. I get that done in, like I said, 20 to 25 minutes. And that's it as far as lifting weights. When it's warm and dry, which is not all that often in Vancouver, I like to cycle. So that doesn't happen all that often because Vancouver is just, not warm and dry all that often. So I cycle as much as I can in that time, but it usually ends up being, maybe max, I'd say 4 months a year. I'm thinking about getting into some yoga, maybe some swimming and stuff like that, but the cycle season just sort of ended, so I haven't decided exactly what I want to do as far as additional movement goes, but I just make sure to get my baseline, roughly 15,000 steps. I stand to work, and then I hit those 2 weight sessions per week for about 20 to 25 minutes. So movement-wise, that's about it. I naturally move a fair bit throughout the day, and there's something called NEAT. So that just stands for non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So it's basically all the calories that you burn throughout the day that aren't formal exercise. So it might be, calories you burn while you're just sitting there, or calories you burn while you're chewing, or calories you burn while you're cooking a meal, vacuuming, brushing your teeth. Everything that you do throughout the day, walking to the grocery store, things like that, really add up, and they're super, super underrated when it comes to weight loss and weight loss maintenance. So you probably have at least somebody in your life that you notice that, they're quite animated, they fidget a fair bit when they talk, they use their hands a lot. Those people are just naturally going to burn more calories throughout the day than somebody that stays naturally quite still. So all of these things add up, and it may seem like, oh man, Marcus, saying that somebody burns more calories just because they're animated when they talk sounds ridiculous. Like, that's tiny. But when you add that up over a day, a week, a month, and then subsequent years, that adds up to some major, major calorie burn compared to somebody that is quite just naturally has more of a sedentary sort of, pull. So that stuff really, really adds up, and I'll probably do a whole separate podcast on that and just touch on all the different ways in which NEAT adds up and how you can sort of implement some more of that stuff into your life to just stay lean. Now, nutrition-wise, I typically don't eat breakfast. I usually have coffee for breakfast, so no cream, no sugar, coconut oil, no butter, no bulletproof coffee for this guy. But I just do black, and I do that because I like to get right to work, and I like not having to cook in the morning. I typically am not very hungry in the morning, so I just rather work with my body as opposed to against it. And yeah, just do coffee for breakfast and then sort of get right to work and then move right to lunch. So I eat about, I'd say 2 meals a day and occasionally a snack. So I'll have my first meal around maybe noon or 1. Sometimes 2, just depending on what's going on and also my hunger levels. And then meal 2 would be maybe around 7 or 8, and I occasionally mix in a snack in there, which would probably be something like fruit. But so meal 1, which usually happens around noon or 1, could be like a bowl of oatmeal cooked in some coconut milk with some fruit and nuts. I would cook sort of the majority of that in water and then just add some coconut milk for some texture and taste. And then I'd top it with nuts and some fruit and then some cinnamon. That's really a common sort of first meal for me. Maybe some white rice with a bunch of veggies, and then again add in some coconut milk, just for texture and taste. And then I just throw some salt and pepper on that. I really like just that basic meal. It tastes awesome to me. That first meal, a lot of the time now, actually doesn't have protein in it. This is kind of just over time. I've naturally been eating a little bit less protein. Yeah, I feel good with it right now. I really go in waves with my nutrition, so I'll start implementing, testing, seeing how I feel, and then trying something else, seeing how I feel. Oh, maybe that works better, maybe it works worse. I might go back to something else. So I'm constantly just sort of testing and seeing what I feel good with at the time, because nutrition is really a moving target. And this is sort of the basis behind the name of my business, which is N1 Fitness. So for some of you that don't know, it's a N of 1 trial, or an N equals 1 trial is basically just a trial of 1. So I really believe that everybody is an individual and you need to find what works for you. Everybody's got a different lifestyle, stressors, sleep habits, all that sort of stuff. There's so much going on. So you really need to figure out what is going to work best for you. And an example of that would be, if I'm not hungry in the morning, why would I force down breakfast? Like, it doesn't make sense to me, especially because if you're in a scenario where you want to manage your weight or even lose weight, forcing down breakfast would just be counterproductive, because overall calories are the number one concern for weight loss and weight maintenance, or weight gain in that matter. So I just would rather work with my body as opposed to against it. So I'd rather eat those calories when I am hungry, which is lunch and dinner, as opposed to forcing something down in the morning just because somebody said, quote unquote, breakfast is the most important meal of the day, which it depends on the person. All right, rant over. Meal 2. So this usually looks something like white rice and veggies cooked with coconut milk again. I typically wouldn't have that meal twice in a row, but sometimes I do. At dinner, I'd usually add a protein, some sort of fish, maybe meat, beans sometimes. It depends on what I'm feeling, but I eat a lot more fish now than I used to. I used to eat a lot more meat, but I just, I'm kind of getting into more of the sustainability and things like that. And it's actually a topic that I want to educate myself on more. But when I do eat meat, I'm kind of trending towards getting something that's a lot more sustainable. So something that is grass-fed and is pastured and things like that. So fish, I usually do, wild salmon or some bassa, maybe cod, something like that. So pretty simple stuff. And then for dessert, I'll usually have fruit and some nuts if I feel like it, with some cinnamon on top. So guys, keep it pretty simple. It sounds kind of boring actually when I kind of lay it out like that now. I also mix in sushi for my lunch meal or dinner fairly often. I'd say probably, I don't know, maybe 2 to 3 times a week. And my go-to order sushi-wise is usually 2 to 3 tuna maki, so 2 to 3 tuna rolls, and 2 to 3 salmon maki. So I'll usually do 2 of one and 3 of the other. But those always typically look like tuna rolls, salmon rolls, and then occasionally I'll do two tuna rolls, 2 salmon rolls, and then 1 avocado roll, just depending on how I feel. I always like extra ginger. I love ginger and wasabi and stuff like that. So that's another common meal, sushi-wise, and I mix that in here and there. On the weekends, the weekends typically look a little bit differently. Just overall, I'd say I eat a little bit more. Usually there's a few drinks in the mix too, maybe a couple beers, a glass or 2 of wine. Typically we'd, have some sort of, Darcy and I would have some sort of thing that we'd do on the weekend, maybe a birthday or a dinner or something like that. So probably a meal or 2 extra would be out and about, and that varies tons. But I do my best to stay on track with those meals out as much as possible, unless I just decide that I'm just going to go for it. It just doesn't happen a ton anymore because digestion is such a priority for me, and I want to feel good the next day. If I eat some funky foods, I'll wake up, my face, my hands, my feet are all inflamed. I feel a little bit lethargic. I don't sleep as well. So it's not that eating those foods is necessarily bad. It's just a trade-off. So it's cost benefit for me. And just based on how I feel, if I'm like, oh, I'm going to go for it and eat some pizzas tonight, but I understand that I'm not going to feel as good the next day as if I ate something that I digested really, really well. So just keeping that in mind for, it's just cost benefit. It's not good or bad, just priorities. That's all. That's pretty much it as far as my nutrition and training protocols go. The key here is consistency. So you want to be as consistent as possible because that is what is going to yield change over the course of time. So I'd much rather somebody be consistent most of the time as opposed to perfect some of the time. So having, 6 solid days and, one sort of, maybe 60% day is going to be a lot better than having, 3 perfect days and then 4 off the rail days. So you just want to think about staying consistent long term. And also when you have those situations where you are really, really good, for example, Monday through Friday afternoon, and then on Friday night, you kind of go to town. Saturday, you're not feeling great. You're like, fuck it, I'm just going to go out and eat whatever. And then Sunday is the same sort of deal as Saturday. And then Monday, okay, I'm back on track Monday. Well, that is a super, super common pitfall for people. And it feels like you're doing a ton of work, which you are. So you're putting a lot of work in Monday through Friday. But then on the weekend, it's sort of like you're paying 0 attention. So you can just kind of make up all of that difference calorie-wise, and it feels like you're spinning your wheels. So it's like, man, putting in so much work Monday through Friday, and I'm not getting any results. And it's often because that weekend is probably more off the rails than you think it is, or you're aware that it is. And this can be actually kind of a cool way to maintain your weight when you get to your desired body composition, but it just can be a really, really tough way to sort of make progress because it feels like, you're spinning your wheels. And I've done it. I used to I used to, years and years ago, I did this diet where I was really, really good Monday through Saturday, and then Sundays were like a free for all, and I would just eat whatever I wanted. And I think sometimes I was maintaining my weight, sometimes actually I was gaining. I was like, what the fuck is going on? Like, putting in so much work here and I'm not losing weight. And it was because Sunday was such an intense calorific day that I was erasing the whole deficit that I was creating throughout the whole rest of the week. So I was just like peanut M&Ms, pizza, ice cream, like all of it. It was craziness. But that's just a way that you can really sort of frustrate yourself and defeat yourself before you get going, because it feels like you're putting in a lot of work, which you are, but then it's like either all in or zero, because over the weekend you're paying zero attention, whereas Monday through Friday you're paying a lot. So that's something to be aware of. It's just a really common pitfall that I see. So I wanted to share that. But yeah, quick podcast today. Send in your questions if you'd like me to cover any topics for future podcasts, Q&As. You can contact me through the website, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, whatever medium tickles your fancy. And if you don't want your name mentioned with your question, just say, hey, don't mention me, Marcus. Otherwise, I'll give you a shout out on the podcast with your question. So, yeah, thanks for listening, guys. Again, so grateful for all the amazing feedback that I got on the first podcast. And there's plenty more to come. I'm lining up some interviews with some people that I've learned a lot from that I'm really, really excited to get on the podcast. I'm actually really surprised that they sort of responded to my emails and stuff like that. We live in a pretty crazy age. I mean, just so much access to so much amazing information and people. So I'm really, really excited to bring you guys some awesome information from those people that I've learned so much from and experts in their field. So pumped for that. Again, thanks so much for listening, and we will see you on episode 3. Bye.